So, Chuck,
Yeah.
which Spider-Man do you want to talk about now?
The most underrated.
Hello, and welcome to the Nerd Card. I'm Phil.
I'm Chuck.
And today we'll be discussing the second of the Spider-Man trilogies,
Yes.
the Andrew Garfield trilogy. I'm sorry, it wasn't a trilogy.
Two
was
movies.
It was two. It should be a trilogy. Hopefully it's going to be a trilogy.
Yeah. Sony, make him another movie with Venom, please.
Please.
The real Venom, not your garbage Venom from the first trilogy.
You're so right.
Yeah.
The real Venom.
That Tom Hardy fella, he's pretty good.
That Hardy dude. Yeah, he's good. But yeah, no, exactly. This is the number 2 Spider-Man, whether you want to say in ranking.
Ouch.
Or in the second set of movies made.
Yeah.
I think either one applies. And
I'd agree.
He's very underrated, even was by me for many years. Rewatching these movies to film this episode, I watched the first movie, and I had liked the second movie when it came out, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But the first movie, I was kind of like, eh. And then rewatching it, I'm like, why did I not give this movie the proper amount of love?
So you didn't give it the proper amount of love. I gave it no love. I had not seen these movies until yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I waited until 2022 to watch these movies.
Yeah.
And it was a revelation for me. I mean, for me, I looked at it as, you know, the Tobey trilogy at the time was the be all end all. I'm like, great. That's it. That's Spider-Man. Why do I need another Spider-Man?
Yeah.
You're a deeply mistrusting person.
So I never watched them. Tom Holland came along and I went, oh, okay, well, Spider-Man's cool again.
Thank you.
But what I didn't realize is I missed out big time with the Andrew Garfield movies.
Yeah.
The first thing that struck me was we saw a different way of Spider-Man web-slinging. We saw a different perspective of it.
Yeah.
In the first movie specifically, we saw it from Spider-Man's point of view, and I went, "Oh my god,
Very
that's
cool."
It was shocking to me how cool that was.
Where Garfield really shines is as Spider-Man.
Yeah,
He is the essential shit-talking Spider-Man that you get in the comic books. And he's brilliant at it.
Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
Just let me go.
Anything but knives!
Oh, it's so simple.
That was cool.
What the hell is this?
Webbing that I developed myself.
And, you know, his Peter Parker is also underrated. For years, people would say, and I was guilty of this myself, that Tobey was great as Peter Parker and Garfield was great as Spider-Man. Well, you know what? Garfield's pretty darn good as Peter Parker. And I would rank him as Peter Parker and Spider-Man over Tobey, frankly, after rewatching these two movies.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
I would too.
I'm going to recognize that some of that is probably from bias from how much Andrew Garfield stole the show in No Way Home.
He did.
Okay.
He did.
100% did. And it's great because now we've all gone and taken a second look at his movies, and he's getting the love he deserves. And there's been a lot of call for him to get
that third movie.
And it's all because when you go back and you watch these again, this movie, does the origin story over, which I don't love, of course, because let's show the origin again. You know, Batman's terribly guilty for that. And Spider-Man was too through these
done it 1,000 times.
First two trilogies, or first two series, trilogy because there was no third one, but the first two series of these Sony live-action Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
But it's done very well. It's the spirit. The spirit of Spider-Man is so strong in these two movies.
I have felt it.
It's amazing upon rewatching.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because it doesn't really follow the source material as well as the Tobey trilogy did,
but it's
not
still
as strictly
largely from it.
Yeah,
it doesn't deviate like future versions do, but because Oscorp is there, Kurt Connors is there.
Yeah.
Kurt Connors works at Oscorp instead of being a professor at NYU.
Right.
Okay, but that's a small thing. It's Otto Hightower.
An unwavering and loyal hand.
who does a great job
I'm wiry.
portraying a
He's
lizard.
wirey.
He's wiry.
But yeah, no, he's great as Kirk Connors, aka the Lizard,
Yes.
who is the main villain of the first movie. This one deviates from the other iterations of Spider-Man is it talks about Peter Parker's parents,
Yes.
which does not happen very often in the original comic books. It's in the comics, but it was put in later, like I want to say in the 80s. In the original 60s comics, they don't ever talk about really his parents either. But this one really throws them in there, and it does have bases in the comics. It's just not from the original Amazing Spider-Man.
Right. Well, and it doesn't happen any other place in live action either. We
No,
don't know
just here.
why he's with Aunt May and Uncle Ben.
Right.
We just know that he is.
Right.
Well, in this one, we really dive into it, especially in the second movie.
Yeah.
That's a lot of the story of the second movie.
Right. But we'll get to that in a
We're gonna
momento.
get to that. Another couple of things that really stuck out to me in the first movie is with Tobey and other iterations that the super strength
Yeah.
is not something that's really portrayed on screen.
No.
But in this iteration, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man deals with it immediately.
Mhm.
Like there's a scene where he's going to the bathroom to get ready and he pulls the handle off the door and he pulls the handle off the sink and like he squeezes the toothpaste and it shoots all over the mirror and he doesn't know how to handle it.
Right.
And I mean, well, heck, this is the only Spider-Man we see lift a car with one hand, too.
Yeah, this has
You know?
This is the closest to how Spider-Man's strength and power and his healing ability, all that from the comic book that's really never given the proper tone, I'm going to say, the proper love,
Yeah.
is in this film. The other thing, too, that I really like about these movies is now he has web shooters, right? It's not the organics like
Yes.
it was in the Tobey
Thank
trilogy.
God.
He makes his own web shooters because Spider-Man is a genius.
Yes.
And the comic books always talked about that, how Peter Parker's a genius, and the movies don't so much. A little bit, but not so much. And this one has it probably more than the other trilogies. He makes his web shooters, and Tom Holland does too. But Garfield makes his own web shooters. He's very brilliant. He figures all these different things out and presses Kirk Connors at Oscorp.
And you are?
He's one of Midtown Science's best and brightest.
That part of his intellect is really in the forefront in these films, and it's again essence of Spider-Man, and I love that they did it that way. And this is also the first one where now they do the origin of bitten by a radioactive spider, which is the same in the 1960s one.
Sure.
But this is a genetically engineered spider, which
Yes.
is also in Into the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales.
That it is.
So this is the first time that they do that is in this series of films.
Yeah. And it's a cool addition because
is.
it ties in Oscorp. It makes Oscorp more centralized within the story, which is really cool and something we're missing in the MCU.
Well,
thus
because
far.
it's Stark Industries.
Christmas, but with more me.
It's Stark Industries instead of Oscorp, but
Yeah.
they're two competing things within Marvel.
Sure.
Moving on from that,
Yeah.
just for a second, we've got to highlight, frankly, the heart and soul of the two Garfield movies, Emma Stone.
Oh, her portrayal of Gwen Stacy is fabulous.
She's so good.
Spot on.
Yeah. Well, and
she's a natural blonde. Most people don't realize she's not actually a redhead. She is normally a blonde. That's how she was born.
That's
how she
true. We have our
has lived
resident
most of her life.
Emma Stone expert right there.
She's lovely. Why wouldn't I appreciate that?
Of course.
But she portrays Gwen Stacy so well, and their
So well.
chemistry. Of course, they were dating, right?
Mm-hmm.
They met on the set, and they started dating on the set of the first movie. And the second movie, they were dating. So their
Yeah.
chemistry is incredible. You know, it carries
It
on a tradition
really
of
is.
Spider-Man dating his co-star. All three iterations.
It does. All three of them
All
happen.
three of them. But, you know, this one was a really strong, the core of this, Phil said, the core of these two films is that relationship between Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker / Spider-Man. Because she
Yes.
knows he's Spider-Man right from the get. He didn't even try to hide it.
No, it's the first thing he wants to tell her when he's having dinner with her or after
on the roof
dinner.
with Dennis Leary.
Yes. Oh, okay. So we got to get to that just for a second. Dennis Leary is like the nightmare dad. You go and you take a girl to prom or whatever else, and not even like
Horrible.
Michael Keaton Vulture bad.
Way worse.
It's like
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
it's Dennis Leary. He's an asshole.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Yo, 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 yo.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote a song about it.
A-S-S-H-O-L-E. Everybody, A-S-S-H-O-L-E.
He did. He wrote a whole song about it. And the banter between Dennis Leary and Andrew Garfield in that scene is just so good.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking over each other. They're both in their, they're so into their characters, and it's just, Dennis Leary was awesome.
Oh, it's
in
Captain
the first
Stacy.
movie,
Yeah,
as
he was
Captain
great.
Stacy. He was, and not in a role I expected him to be awesome in. When I saw that it was Dennis Leary, I'm like, oh, come on.
He kills it.
Like, really? And then he killed it. He
Kills it.
He did a really, really great job.
And the reception for this was so poor when it came out. I remember I lived in Arizona at the time. I went and saw it at a movie theater in Tempe, and I was the only one in the movie theater.
That's just terrible.
Because well, here's the thing. Spider-Man 3 came out in 2007, and it was a turd.
Sure.
This came out in 2012.
It didn't take long.
There
for them
wasn't
to
much
reboot.
time. You're rebooting. You have a new origin story. You know, people see in the previews, you see this Peter Parker who's skateboarding and shredding, and he's
Sure.
Is he a little too cool for the comic book? Yeah, that's way cooler than he was in the comic book.
He is.
But with that, again, still though, as I transition and get older, and I know I've said it in other videos, I'm getting more away from this insistence that everything be directly the same as it was in the comic.
Sure.
What's more important to me now, I think, really is, does it capture the spirit of the comic?
Well, and the Garfield set of movies certainly does.
Its energy surrounds us and binds us.
Very much so, 100%.
I will say, you mentioned the skateboarding and all of that. The one thing that really struck me about that, yes, him being too cool and all of that, it was not so much that, but the fact that Peter Parker's pretty loose with his identity as Spider-Man. Like, he wants to let it out. He kind of flaunts it. When he gets his new powers, he basically just does whatever he wants. I mean, he throws a football and dents a foul pole or a goalpost.
He didn't mean to do that,
like,
but he did flaunt it to Flash.
yes. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
The basketball scene is hilarious, first
Yeah.
of all. But also, it puts on that show. It's hey, I got these new powers, and you're gonna act like an idiot because of it.
Yeah, he does do that.
So he definitely does that. One last thing we got to mention about the first movie is the gradual decline in age of Aunt May.
Yeah.
With Sally Field taking over the role.
Yeah, Rosemary Harris is about 175 years old as
roughly
Aunt May in the
yes.
first movie. And in this movie, you know, Sally Field is older, but she's not ancient looking.
No, not at all.
She's still, you know, in the workforce, and you know, she's
right.
still not totally gray. You know, Aunt May is in the first movies, the Tobey trilogy is the Aunt May bacon pies from the comic book. That's,
yeah,
you know,
she's the little old lady and yeah, frail.
You know, and then,
could you do that again?
Oh, here you go.
Yeah, perfect.
And then so you start to get the de-aging of Aunt May. But you have Uncle Ben again. It's Martin Sheen, I believe, is Uncle Ben in this movie.
He is Martin Sheen.
And he, you know, you get the great power, great responsibility again. Not
course.
as heavy as it was in the Tobey trilogy, but it's still there, and that feeling is still, you know, in these movies. And once more, you have, just like in the previous trilogy of films, in these two films, you have Spider-Man pulling away from his love interest, and that's really heavy in the second film, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yep.
Because of fearing for their safety because he's Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, and not just that, but because at the end of the movie, he's asked.
Well, he makes
a promise.
I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. A promise.
He's asked to make a
I ain't
promise
dropping no eaves or anything.
to Captain Stacy.
You don't get that reference because you haven't seen it.
He's out of line, but he's right.
I don't, yeah. So I don't understand that reference. Thanks, Captain America.
It's great.
You're welcome.
Either way, he makes a promise to Captain Stacy to keep Gwen out of it.
Right.
And does a terrible job in the second movie. We're going to get to that just a second.
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield would be perfect
Sure.
to link up with Ryan Reynolds to do a Spider-Man
mention that
Deadpool movie.
Deadpool's origin is a failed Spider-Man costume, essentially.
100%. All right, so the second Andrew Garfield movie of three.
Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Of three, please.
Hopefully.
Sees Peter Parker come into his own a little bit, especially, I'm talking Peter Parker, not Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Come into his own a little bit. He befriends Flash, which is something that does happen in the comics down the line.
Sure does.
But doesn't really happen in other iterations of Spider-Man on the big screen that we've seen thus far.
Yeah.
Well, in the first one, in Tobey's, he alienates him.
No, he didn't. He wasn't pals with, Magic Mike's sidekick.
I loved you in Magic Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. And in the MCU, he's just kind of a sad sack.
Yeah,
like Flash Thompson
Flash
isn't
way
really
different in the MCU.
He's not Flash Thompson.
But yeah, this one
is. Yeah,
this is actually the closest Flash Thompson to the comic book.
Oh, sure, absolutely. A bully who comes around because he
Yeah.
realizes that Peter's going through a lot of the same
Yeah.
stuff. So that's a cool moment. But what this movie really dives into is the mystery of Peter's mom and dad.
Yes, specifically Dad, who was a scientist.
Yes.
At Oscorp, and you come to learn, through this that the spider that bit Peter kind of had his own DNA in it to begin with.
The human DNA that I implanted in the spiders was my own.
So it could only be Peter Parker to be the
Really?
Spider-Man,
Yeah.
or
Someone
himself.
in that line.
Yeah, someone in that line.
And so that's kind of a cool tidbit. I don't know how accurate that is to the comic or not, but I thought it was pretty neat. It played well the way that they made the film.
It worked with these two films. Yes.
Yeah, and so the other big thing in this film, as we were talking about in the first movie, is that their relationship with Gwen and Peter is really strong in this movie, and it's a big part of the whole theme of the film. And you can see the on-screen chemistry between the two of them because they were heavily dating at this part.
Yep.
And you feel it, but that makes you feel it as the viewer.
Certainly, and they're so good at portraying it. I mean, both of them are great at portraying that.
They're
even
great
when
actors on their own right.
Even when they're not involved.
Yeah,
with
they're great actors in
with
their own right
co-star.
and everything else they ever do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, smart guy. Thanks.
But except maybe Andrew Garfield and Doctor Who, but yeah, it was just a bad Southern accent.
It could be.
Either way. To see them, in real life being, dating and all that, they really bring that into the film, and it really feels genuine.
It does.
It's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah. And I want to get into something else.
Oh, please do.
So, Jamie Foxx in this movie is incredible.
He is.
Electro is, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is the best Spider-Man villain.
Yeah.
A lot of people will argue that Doc Ock is the next with Alfred Molina.
That'd be me.
I'm going to say every bit as good as Doc Ock. I can accept the Doc Ock argument, but every bit as good as Electro.
And who are you?
Don't you know? I'm Electro.
Jamie Foxx's Electro, specifically in this film, was incredible.
I can tell you that before today, I would have argued with you.
Yeah.
And today was the first time I saw the second movie, so I'm going to go ahead and agree with you.
He was so good.
Great.
The thing that I really, really liked about this film, and I liked it when I saw it in the theater about this, and then I just hit it home again when I watched it in preparation to shoot this video, is this portrait of Jamie Foxx as this lonely, kind of going crazy guy.
Oh, yeah.
When he's walking around, the music that is playing is in sync with him having voices. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And then the more he delves into or falls into craziness and insanity, and his work gets worse and worse, and then as he's turning into Electro, it gets amplified and intensified.
Oh, sure.
With the electronic music, in concert with the electricity uses that he's doing, it's so well done.
No, I didn't set you up.
You lied to me.
No, I'm trying to help you. Let me help you.
I was just going to say it culminates in that his last fight with Spider-Man, where he's hitting the different columns and they're making the...
I hate this song.
Oh, it should be, yeah, I hate that song.
I hate that song. Yeah. It's like, oh man, that's really cool. It was something Chuck was like, hey, be on the lookout for this. And when it finally clicked, I went, that is cool. That's and even like the wide shot of that looked like, you know, bars on a stereo or an equalizer, where the notes are happening and they're coming up and down, and it was a really nice touch.
It was brilliant, and you know he was the main villain. Of course, you also have Harry Osborn in this movie,
sure,
who's introduced into this, and you know you see Harry and Peter's friendship, which is, you know, in the comic book as well, maybe different iterations, maybe not exactly the same, but then he becomes, later in the film, he becomes the Green Goblin.
Yeah,
he's not terrible.
No,
he's not.
Is he Willem Dafoe? No,
but you know he does do something very accurate to the comics, and that is drop poor Gwen Stacy from a building.
Heartbreak,
which she ends up dying from,
or spine break, or
whichever.
Yeah,
but it is heartbreaking. You were right.
It is.
You're so emotionally invested in these characters because of the way that this film is written, directed. When that happens, you get misty. If you're a Spider-Man fan, I got misty.
Yeah, no, it's a devastating moment, especially, well, for Spider-Man, for Peter Parker, but also for the audience.
When you're seeing Gwen Stacy fall, and you're like, get her. And Spider-Man always gets them, right?
Yeah.
Spider-Man always saves his people. He always makes a save, and he doesn't.
He doesn't that time.
He fails.
It's hard to watch.
Well, it is, and then you know it's really hard to watch, and we'll talk about that again in another video.
We sure will.
But you know, it's when you watch that, you really feel for him, and then you really feel what the next couple minutes as they're showing him over the next few months, just being that funk. You get it. You're there with him, right?
Sure.
And it's a really, I don't know. I was really into it, and it really, you know, I was sad for him or with him.
It hits really hard, and what that brings us to after those 5 months is another moment that you just kind of go, oh,
it makes you misty again.
It does. It really does. What ends up happening is they're trying to set up the Sinister Six for this Spider-Man, and it never really came to fruition. But what we get out of that is the Rhino.
Yeah. Paul Giamatti playing the Rhino. It's strange.
It was cool.
I mean, he's a great actor.
He wasn't out of place.
It's kind of strange.
It is a little strange, but he wasn't out of place in the movie.
He's not. But to me, he's chucking billions now, and that's it.
You can indeed craft an argument.
Well, there you go. But he's, you know, laying siege to the city. He's got some cops pinned down, and a little kid in a Spider-Man outfit walks out and tries to stop him.
Yeah, goes and stands in front of him.
And then
you hear from behind him,
"Hey, Spider-Man."
"Hey, Spider-Man.
Why
don't you let me handle this one?"
Yeah, let me handle this, jerk. Go take care of your mom.
You're the bravest little kid I ever saw.
It's just so freaking cool.
It's great.
So freaking cool.
He is great as Spider-Man.
He is.
Yeah.
He really absolutely is. And that brings us to the last point that I have written down here, which we've already made. We want a third Amazing Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was unfairly. I mean, obviously at the time those movies didn't do that well in the theater, and it's a shame. And in retrospect, he really does deserve a new third movie.
He does.
And after the events of No Way Home, which we'll talk about again in another video, I think the public wants it too.
Yeah,
I mean, Andrew Garfield as the Spider-Man, now that they're doing all the different multiverse things, we'll go on a little tangent for a second here, but Marvel's big, the multiverse is huge right now in Marvel. That's in this phase.
Gigantic.
Okay, I got this. You're saying that this whole place here, it's just tons of super people.
And the Sonyverse is kind of playing into that. Bring back Andrew as the Spider-Man in the Venomverse, whatever you want to call it.
How hard would that be? It's not hard.
He's a fan. I mean, he cried the first time he put on the Spider-Man, the Spider-Man hood. He's a Spider-Man fan.
I was going to say that's the biggest difference to me between Tobey and Garfield, is that you feel that Tobey was doing it for the paycheck, and maybe the script, and maybe the writing. Garfield did it because he loves this character.
Yeah, it's like lots of our favorite characters of different nerd things loved the work before they got into it. David Tennant loved Doctor Who.
Of course, yeah.
And then he was the Doctor. Same here with Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
Loved Spider-Man and then got to play Spider-Man.
And so much so that it overwhelmed him.
Yes.
Yeah. Just a cool thing to see.
Absolutely.
We want to see a third one. I think that's
Please.
going to wrap it up for The Amazing Spider-Man. We'll leave it at that. But in the meantime, I would like you to check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of that good stuff. We are out there. Remember, likes are free. And please remember to share us with all your nerd friends so they can join in the party as well. And with that, we will say, what's on your nerd card?